Hello, everyone. Good morning. We are going to get started in just a moment here. We're letting other people join the room. So we're going to give them about a minute, and then we're going to have first a short introduction from Gilberto Ochoa Ruiz, and then we'll have, of course, Matias Valdenegro-Toro give the full webinar presentation today. So bear with us just a moment. Beto, would you like to share your screen to get started?
Yeah, let's go.
And then just a quick question for the presenters. Do you prefer if attendees ask questions during your presentation, or would you like them to hold questions till afterwards?
I will say that for me it will work better after the presentation because it will be short.
Okay. And Matias?
Yeah, I think also for me, after the presentation, I have a slide at the end to switch to questions from the audience.
Okay, perfect. So audience members, if you can please hold your questions. If you would like to put them in the chat box so that you don't forget, then we can, of course, ask all the questions at the end of each presentation. Okay, and it's about 3 after, so I would say let's go ahead and get started and then move on from here. So starting out with Gilberto Ochoa Ruiz.
Hello, everyone. Glad that you are here for this for the presentation of this supercomputing initiative that LXAI is launching and in collaboration with NVIDIA and with Tec de Monterrey for the first iteration of the program. So basically, I will introduce a little bit what was the idea behind this project, so you can get some context. So basically, as you may know, I think you're seeing my full screen.
Yes, we are.
Okay, perfect. So as you might know, LXAI or LatinX is an organization that is basically has a lot of programs trying to help democratize the access to AI to people in Latin America and around the world, basically people from Latin's origin. And we have been working in organizing workshops in major AI conferences and some other initiatives like mentoring programs and so on. So basically, after working some time, and this is something I will explain this in the presentation. For example, we organized a very successful workshops in 2021 in CVR and ICCV, which are computer vision conferences. And we were really happy to be able to help a lot of people, and especially, for example, this year also we managed to have a lot of people attending the workshops. For example, for CPR, we have around 120 attendees from different countries and from different levels of the studies. For CPR 2022, we have 33 persons attending in person from all these countries as well. We were able to help a lot of them to attend the conference in person through LXAI grants or maybe some CPR grants. We have a lot of agreements with different organizations to do that. Basically, this was a great effort of our sponsors. I mean, from our sponsor chairs, the sponsors we have, and also from the diversity and inclusion, equity and inclusion chairs at CPR. So we were really happy with these results. But we all know that one of the major challenges for people to actually have a paper accepted in I mean, we can help people to go to the workshop, maybe with some work in progress or something, but we can make them able to go to the next step, like actually publishing a CPR. I mean, we can help them from the research part, but maybe from the technical part a little bit. But if we cannot give them access to the actual computer resources that they need, it will be very difficult, right? So we were actually, after organizing some room tables, we noticed that there was this access to GPU computer access was very difficult, and it's one of the challenges for publishing paper, right? Because when you try to publish a paper in CPR or ICML, they ask you to do tons of experiments. Obviously, these experiments are very expensive. So we thought, okay, what can we do to help to democratize access to these resources? And so basically, we after these workshops, we came up with the idea of these projects. As you know, very quickly, some numbers. For example, we see that there is a lot of increase in the publications. For example, in deep learning, number of publications is increasing like almost 200% every year. And in terms of number of patents, it's increasing by about seven-fold every year as well. At least from 2010 to 2020, this from the World Intellectual Property Organization. It's a very interesting report. But what we see that this one is from the Stanford Intelligence Index report. Basically, we see that people from Latin America are only producing about 2 to 3% of the papers in major conferences and also in journals. So we see this same trend, basically saying that we need to do something if we want to increase the participation of Latins and Latin people from Latin America in major conferences and in the AI conversation anywhere, right? It's not only going to the conference. We want to have some impacts in the AI conversation, basically. So after realizing about this, some of our members here, for example, originally was mainly Niels, Laura, and me, and Matias also. We came up with this idea of what can we do to help people in Latin America and different parts of the world. So and as we have some very nice sponsors, we started talking with some of them. And at the end, NVIDIA was really happy to help. So they said, okay, give us a proposal. We started working on a proposal for what we wanted this project to be. And basically, they said, okay, we like your idea. Then the next step is where is this hardware going to be located? So basically, the next step was to propose to some universities to actually run the program and manage the computer and so on. And after that, so basically, we put together this program that Matias will explain. Actually, he will explain the whole process. But basically, just very quickly, we wanted to help people from academia, startups, NGOs, and other organizations to be able to run compute-intensive applications or the AI models in these computer resources. And we have some ideas of what kind of projects we want to prioritize, like, AI for good, medical applications, this kind of thing, or social projects with social impact. So we have some ideas for this. I think Matias will explain it in a little bit more detail. So basically, these are the specs of the computer. And the mission, basically, I will stop here maybe after the mission. Basically, we want to strengthen the capacities of the LXAI ecosystem, including researchers, academics, students, NASA startups, NGOs, and civil societies interested in harnessing the potential of data science and AI for social and environmental endeavors through access to infrastructure. Basically, some of the goals is increase the opportunities for Latin researchers in AI by providing high-performance computing resources to students and researchers, increase the representation of LXAI and Latin researchers and the students in the AI community, as I mentioned, build the capacity for artificial intelligence research in Latin countries, and remove the hardware and financial barriers to produce a high-quality research. That's something I was talking about. Maybe I will explain something more about. So is that I actually, apart from this access to the computer, we also came up with this idea of creating some committees in order to strengthen the LXAI community. So basically, in tandem with these hardware resources that we have, we created some committees from people from LXAI, basically, or people that apply to this program. And basically, we have 3 committees that will be helping with the management of this infrastructure. So basically, we have the research committee that will be taking care of something like, for example, managing the cover proposals, doing dissemination, the editorial process. That means going through the submissions that we receive, trying to send them to the appropriate reviewers and so on, and also doing the final decisions. We will have a technical committee that is people, some of the people in the research committee may be also in the technical committee. So basically, it's trying to do some mentoring and support for accessing the computer, preparing some technical materials so you can speed up your training and try to have as less problems as possible. So basically, also we'll be giving support and forums for troubleshooting and taking care of the computer administration. And we also have the teaching committee that is basically doing the mentoring and support. Actually, this very effort is coming from the teaching committee. Basically, we'll prepare some teaching materials, AI models, and this kind of things, and organizing tutorials and workshops. And eventually, we also want to do some of the schools and this kind of thing. So that's all from me. Thank you very much. Thank you, Matias. So you can go ahead.
Perfect, thank
I
you.
don't know if you have any questions. Yeah, sorry. Anyone?
Yes, maybe we can start with questions if there are questions for Gilberto, and then we can start with my presentation. So let me check where's the chat.
Yeah, I think there are no questions.
Okay. Yeah, we will also take questions after my presentation as well. So yeah, thank you, Gilberto. So I will now proceed with our main webinars. So it's titled Writing GPU Supercomputing Grand Applications. It's basically that we have this new program, which we call kind of GPU Supercomputing program. And the idea is that we have hardware that is installed in the Tecnológico de Monterrey. That's where Gilberto works. And the idea is that it will work kind of as a research council, meaning that we will accept applications to use this hardware for your experiments, to write papers, to do large calculations. And you will get time for this. So this is not monetary support. It is only about using this hardware, because of course, we got this hardware donation by NVIDIA, for which we're very, very grateful. It's around $250,000 that this hardware costs. But the question is, how do you actually share this with the community? You cannot really put everyone in Latin America to use this, because of course there's no capacity for everyone, but there has to be some kind of selection of the projects. So we don't expect that we will get too many projects at the beginning, but this is also something that we want to build over time. So some important information is here is the website of the program, where you can actually apply for one of these grants. And let's start with some motivation. So Gilberto already explained that basically in Latin America, we don't have much compute availability, and actually found this very nice plots from the top500.org. So this is an organization that basically surveys what is the capabilities of, let's say, supercomputing around the world, and makes lists every 3 months. So it ranks, okay, which country has the most compute and so on. And you can see these plots on the left part. At the top, we have the system share. So how many systems are in let's say, in Asia, in North America, in the European Union, and so on. And you can see there's a tiny slice, which is kind of dark blue, which is South America. And you can see that it's a very tiny part of the share of the systems. And you consider how much compute is there in total. It's even smaller. It's like less than 5%, I think, I would say, of the compute that is available, let's say, in supercomputers around the world is available in Latin America. And from the survey that we had to build this program was that most of these computers are basically in Argentina or in Brazil, and they're not really used for research. They're used, for example, for petroleum exploration and things that are not directly AI research. So we say, yeah, this is a huge problem. You can see that most of the compute is in Asia and in North America, and also in the European Union. But of course, it's a huge problem that if you don't have compute, you can really compete with the kind of research that of course needs compute. And this becomes even more important with very large CNNs or very large transformers. So it is very obvious that Latin America is far behind in terms of compute availability. And we need to have compute, including GPU compute, not only for machine learning research, but also for teaching, because teaching is also a very important part. Like, for example, you want to do a small project, maybe even a very small project will still need a decent amount of GPU computing that is not available, maybe in your university or your institution. So the idea is that with this program, we can make a small dent into these plots to actually support Latin American researchers around the world with actually compute that is only available for them, mostly. So what are the principles that we have for this new program? Is that we want to strengthen the capacities of the LXAI ecosystem, including researchers, academics, students, startups, or NGOs and civil and institutions in the civil society. So so this is for people that are interested in harnessing the potential of data science and artificial intelligence for social or environmental endeavors, and they need access to infrastructure, meaning access to GPU computing. And the principal goal is to increase Latin American representation and research opportunities in artificial intelligence. So it's basically the same goal that the overall LXAI organization has, but specifically about access to GPU computing. And for this, of course, we have hardware that NVIDIA has donated to us. And we also want to build capacity for artificial intelligence research, because it is very difficult to have, let's say, good graduate programs, good PhD programs, and good researchers if there's no capacity in terms of compute. Like it's much easier if you move to another country, but that's not the idea. The idea is to build this capacity in Latin American countries, and maybe over time, these countries will actually start to say, okay, we now have a critical mass of AI researchers that they can actually invest in compute directly into their own countries. So this the idea is to kickstart this and maybe make a small contribution to reduce this barrier. And as a final goal is to remove hardware and financial barriers to producing high quality research. So what actually matters when you submit a proposal to this program is that it's the potential to produce high quality research. It doesn't matter that you need maybe 100 days of GPU computing to do some experiment. This is something that can be done because the hardware we have is very, very powerful. But the idea is that you can get high quality research out of this in Latin American countries. So first I will talk a little about organization. So initially we call this a GPU committee, and we subdivided into several subcommittees. So we have a general committee, and here I put some of the people that are here. So this is not all the people that we have in the committee, but this is I think the ones that we usually interact. So first, of course, is Laura, and then Maria Luisa also, Pablo Rivas, Carlos, and so on. And this is in the general committee. So everyone is in the general committee, and we have also subcommittees. So Gilberto and Nils are in the research subcommittee. So it's the one that deals with running the program, basically getting proposals, getting reviewers, deciding which proposals should be accepted, and so on. We also have a technical subcommittee with CJ and Ulysses, which deal with the infrastructure, basically to set up the infrastructure, make sure that everything works well, and also support the people that will use the cluster remotely. So of course, all of this access is completely remote, and you need to have some infrastructure to use this. So I think we will use Slurm as a platform to submit jobs, and then you will get an account in the system, then you can submit your jobs directly to this. And there's a teaching subcommittee where I am. We also have Hansen Clever and Pedro, and we basically create teaching materials. So you actually learn how to use the cluster and support you in terms of teaching. So this is also, this presentation is part of this teaching subcommittee. And we have other committees like external affairs to connect with other organizations and so on. So like now the important thing, what kind of hardware do we have? So before talking about hardware, the idea is that we want to make kind of a network of locations in Latin America that have hardware that is, let's say, this supercomputing hardware. And the first location we have is at the Tecnológico de Monterrey in this AI hub. And NVIDIA donated a DGX A100, and it has 8 A100 GPUs. So each of them has 80 gigabytes of RAM. So in total, it has 640 gigabytes of RAM in total only for GPUs. So I think this is a lot of RAM. It's more than what I have at my local university. It has 2 AMD EPIC CPUs. And it has 128 cores in total. So even if you want to run CPU jobs, that can also be done because it has a lot of CPU cores. But of course, the main aim of this is to do machine learning or AI. And for that, you need mostly machine learning and mostly GPUs, of course. It has 2 terabytes of system RAM, so 248 gigabytes, and 30 terabytes of NVMe SSD storage. So this is very, very fast storage. So you will definitely not be bottlenecked by the storage transfer rates. An important thing is that this is only the first location that we have. So we have right now only one DGX A100, and maybe in the future we'll get more. And the idea is that at some point we will open new GPU network locations around Latin America. But as you see that the hardware we have that we were graciously donated by NVIDIA is very, very powerful. I think we can run a quite good number of projects here. So what do we look for in terms of projects? Well, first is that it should be submissions from LatinX identifying researchers, but it should not be, all of them don't have to be LatinX. We have some boundaries that you can set. So you can have, I think it's 50% of the team has to be Latinx identifying. So you can have collaborators or graduate students that maybe are doing a PhD in Latin America, but they're not Latinx identifying. The first they can be from India, from Pakistan, or from other countries, and that's not a problem. So we also want to have submissions from NGOs, for example, if they want to do large-scale research, and from startups, and this can be globally, it can be anywhere. So what matters is only let's say the Latinx identifying people in the team who are teaching at universities as well, or perform basic or applied research and meet the eligibility requirements. So we will cover the eligibility requirements in a while. But the idea of this presentation is to give you all the important details about this program. So it can be theoretical or methodological contributions. And the idea is that you have a PI. like a principal investigator for academic projects or technical leads for applied projects. So this is not only for university, let's say, researchers or professors. You can also apply if you have an NGO or a startup that needs to have some compute availability for their projects. And the idea is to highlight their contribution to improve the research or social, economic, or environmental conditions in Latin America. And the most important thing is that there should be a very good or very clear justification of why do you need to use GPUs in your proposal. Like if we consider that most people do machine learning, so it's very easy to say why do you need to use GPUs in machine learning, because that's basically like the state of the art in terms of hardware. But for example, you can have maybe other projects that maybe it's not so clear if you need to use GPUs or not. So for this, you need to clearly just justify this need of using GPUs. And I think you can also, if you need to use CPU cores instead of GPUs, because you have maybe a task that is more sequential, I think that can also be done. But of course, this reduces the availability of CPUs because we only have 128 CPU cores. So I think maybe you need to use only CPU cores, for example, if you need to use a lot of RAM, because the DGS A100 has 2 terabytes of RAM. So maybe you need to run, for example, an experiment that uses a lot of CPU RAM. That can also be done. So it's not exclusively, of course, for GPU, but it's mostly about GPUs, of course. So here I have a non-exhaustive list of what kind of projects or what kind of topics that we accept. So we try to put a very comprehensive list. But of course, it's not completely comprehensive because you cannot put all the possible topics in this list. So it can be, for example, innovation in education, healthcare, robotics, computer vision and machine learning, and machine perception, or human-computer interaction. But as I mentioned, this is not a non-exhaustive list. If your project fits broadly into AI, your project can probably be funded by this program. Now, what kind of stuff we do not accept? And this is a very strict list. One is stuff that is related to the military or related to war, with some exceptions for example, for humanitarian relief. So for example, if you want to do a project about detecting tanks using machine learning, then maybe that's not something we will fund, because this can kind of, it comes very close to a gray area into dual use. Like, for example, we don't want to fund stuff that the military can use, for example. So we want to fund strictly civilian applications of machine learning. So also stuff related to the oil industry, we will probably not fund it, because the oil industry already has its own, let's say, large GPU clusters. So we found that most of the GPU computing in Brazil is actually owned by the oil industry, because it's a very big industry in Brazil. And even GPU clusters in universities are owned by a lot of oil industries. So there's no need for us to fund if they already have their own capabilities. So political projects, so stuff that can be used, for example, disseminating fake news, or stuff that can be seen as politically sensitive, we will also not fund it. Maybe we can have some exceptions. For example, if you want to detect fake news or detect harassment and stuff like that, that's probably something we can fund, but not stuff that is directly, let's say, for a political purpose. So stuff that also can be interpreted or is directly a human rights violation. So for example, surveilling people, that's also something we will not fund. So for example, this can happen in terms of, for example, having CCTV data, basically images of cameras, and then you say, okay, I want to detect people and what they're doing, or I want to detect, let's say, surveil an area and see if people are committing a crime. That's maybe something we will not fund, because this can be easily used for human rights violations. So I think China is one of the examples that people use here. And also, finally, toy projects is something we will not fund. So we want to have here to do research that has the potential to be publishable, especially at the top conferences. So for example, if you say, okay, we want to build as a model, let's say BERT, specifically for the Spanish language or for some local language in your community, this is of course not a toy project and it has the potential to be funded. But if you want to, for example, train a model on MNIST, that's probably not something not so complex that probably you don't need a GPU to do that. And in terms of toy projects, we can also include teaching, but we will have, let's say, calls or proposals for teaching-related activities later. So this is not directly for this project, but for example, if you submit that you need GPU access to run some experiments for teaching, that probably works. But it should, of course, not be a toy project. And again, this is also a non-exhaustive list, and we reserve the right to include some teams into this list because there are, of course, some projects that maybe they are too controversial to be funded. So what are the requirements for PIs, for principal investigators? So for academic projects, you should have the PI should be a professor at the university, like assistant, associate, or full professor at a university or an institution that grants degrees. And for academic application, you can have postdocs as co-PIs, but not as a primary PIs, because the idea is that in general, a PI should have a permanent position or something that is tenure track. So the project can be executed, let's say, for 1 year, and there are guarantees that the person will actually be dedicated for like they will not leave the university for the duration of the project. That's basically what we have these rules. For startups, you can have NGOs and startups like non-academic institutions are also strongly encouraged to reach out. And ideally, it should include also one academic institution because I mean, it's not a strict requirement, but it's something like a recommendation that you have people with a PhD that know how to do research. So then we can kind of guarantee that people will actually aim to do this as a way to publish later. Like it doesn't have to be mandatory, but it's encouraged to increase the research quality of the proposal. Because you can have, for example, startups where you have a lot of people that do, let's say, technical things, but they're not, let's say, at the level of publishable research, and then maybe that's also something we will not fund. So you can submit one application per year or per call, but it's mostly per year. So the year is almost over, so there are only 4 months left in this year. And also the main author of a proposal can only serve as a PI or co-PI once per round. And this is because we don't want to get basically duplicates of the same project submitted. And the idea is that the team applying for a granted access, so the team can be PI, co-PI, and collaborators or students that will work in this project. 50% of them have to be LatinX identified members. So not all of them have to be. You can have people that are not LatinX that maybe are collaborators, but ideally the PI should be Latinx identified. So this is ideal. But of course, it depends. Like for example, if there's an institution outside of Latin America that has a lot of Latin American or Latinx identifying people, like for example, Spain, it is okay that the PI is not Latinx identifying, but maybe all the students or all the collaborators that will work in this project will be Latinx identifying. So this is kind of a strict rule that is at least half of them have to be Latinx identifying, because we want, of course, to affect or improve our own community, right? Now, what do we actually offer for you if you apply? And then, of course, you get one of these grants from us. Is that all applicants will, of course, receive feedback. Like these proposals will be peer reviewed by reviewers that we will select, and you will get this feedback, of course, to see, okay, why was your proposal not accepted, or why was it accepted? And there's also potential for collaboration with the reviewers and other applicants of the program. And this is, of course, optional. Like we can pull people and see how to do kind of a mentoring session for all of them and to connect. So it's also an opportunity for collaboration and networking. Gilberto, I think you have your, yeah. But to select our list,
can I add something there, Matias?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Also something that is important is that NVIDIA is offering help to amplify like some of the selected projects. If they deem them like nice projects, NVIDIA will try to amplify those projects in their websites, so you will get some exposure in by NVIDIA.
Yes. Yeah, I think this is in the next step. So of course, if you get one of the grants, we will of course give you some exposure in our social networks and in our website. But the biggest thing that the awardees will get is access to the GPU computing cluster at the Tech de Monterrey location. So this is what we have now. So in your proposal, you will specify how many job hours or how much time do you actually need for your project, and we will allocate you this in the GPU cluster, and then you can use it for the project. So you also get documentation for access training and setup of the project's intersystem, because of course you need to copy maybe data. You need to set up your application to run in the cluster, and you will get definitely documentation and support on how to do this. So of course you will not be alone doing this. You will also get access to training materials from NVIDIA, because it's an NVIDIA system, of course. So maybe there's some NVIDIA specific things that you need to learn. And you also get support from the education subcommittee to get further outcomes of the project. An important thing to note is that the support is only in terms of access to the GPU computing cluster, So we don't award, let's say, monetary awards for the projects. So you will only get, let's say, access to the system. And for example, all the costs that come with using the GPU cluster are covered by us directly. For example, electricity. Like you know that using the DGX A100 uses, I don't know, I think 4 kilowatts of kilowatt hours of energy per hour. So it's very energy intensive, and this is of course covered already by you. You don't need to worry about that. And what do we expect from our this is first that, of course, to a reasonable extent, the selected project should acknowledge that they receive support from the consortium, from NVIDIA, from LatinX AI, and from the Tech de Monterrey AI Hub. So for example, if you publish a paper, in the acknowledgements, you need to include an acknowledgement that you received GPU computing credits from us. So that's actually not much. This is very standard for getting grants. So it should not be a problem for anyone to do this. And you should also inform us for publications, presentations, code, and data release that you actually do. And because there you also have to acknowledge our support, and we also probably can support you in terms of, say, let's say you have published a paper, we can probably expose it through our Twitter feed or through our, or as part of our annual report as well. So you are expected to provide updates and feedback to the LatinX AI community via surveys or reports. So there will be some reporting that is needed, but it's not that much. Also, the award recipients will have an opportunity to work with NVIDIA or LatinX AI on information statements. So this is the visibility or exposure thing that Gilberto was mentioning. So we will definitely generate visibility for your institution and for the consortium as well. So now we come into the how do you actually apply? So for application materials, you need to submit something around a 4-page proposal describing your project. So we have a template that is available on the website. So there's an overleaf template that Gilberto made. But the basic information that you need to submit through Open Review. So the link is here below. It's basically basic information about the PI, email address, and very standard information. Information about the co-PI, abstract and keywords, and all the information in the proposal. And optionally, if you think that your topic is very niche, maybe you need to suggest reviewers, you can also do this. But of course, we will decide if we want to use these set of reviewers or not. So what is the schedule? So it is actually a bit tight. So the deadline is on September 1. Maybe we will extend this, so we have to see. But the deadline in the current program is September 1. And the announcement of the project, so it will take around 3 months to evaluate this project. So around the beginning of December, we will have the announcement for the selected projects, and the project should start probably at the beginning of 2023. And then, of course, the project will start, and then we will have a new call for projects or for proposals in 2023. So this is only the first time we're doing this. So if you cannot make it for this deadline, maybe you can make it for the next one in 2023. So what should your proposal have? So here we have a description. So it's a lot of text, of course, but this is also part of the template. So it is just a summary of what the template says. So of course, you should have background and motivation, like a problem statement and why this problem is important. You should have a relevance and related work statement, intellectual merit. Why is this important, let's say, for the scientific community or for your community? It doesn't have to be always let's say, scientific relevance, but it can be relevance for your own NGO or for your own startup. And you should also compare this to the related work, like what people have done before, and say, okay, what are you going to do that goes beyond the state of the art? And then you should discuss how your AI project will solve this problem or try to solve it. Does it have to solve the problem completely? And how do you plan to build upon the state of the art? And then methods and approach. So you need to describe around in 1 page, how do you plan to solve the problem? Let's say, break it into sub-problems, how these sub-problems fit into the GPU computing cluster and so on. So you have defined goals, milestones, measures of success, deliverables, and all the standard stuff that comes in a proposal. You should also estimate how much time do you actually need in terms of GPU computing, like in terms of hours, days, or weeks. You should also have expected results and impact on 1 page approximately. So kind of describe what impact do you expect from your project. And for academic project, you can discuss in terms of forming human resources. For example, your PhD students will finish their PhD. Of course, then this means that the project doesn't have to be like everything has to be for the advancement of the PI. It can be for advancement of master students, bachelor students, or even PhD students. Like these PhD students can be part of the project, and the idea is that maybe they need to do a very large experiment that can be done in our cluster, and then this will advance their let's say human resources formation or capital or human capital, I think it's called. So if you will use any publicly available data, if you create with new data sets, like you can also create data sets using machine learning, what will be the impact in other projects that you will have, or how will this advance the set of art or knowledge? Like why should this project be funded? How it is interesting for the overall community. Then you should also finally have a data policy. So you have a few sentences saying how we will actually share the output of the project. Let's say you will make some code open source, some data set public, or you plan to publish this. Ideally, for most projects, the idea is that you publish the results, like at our own workshops or at the top AI conferences. So this is not really a legal requirement, but it's a statement of how you plan to do this, because we also use this to select projects. And in between the expected results and impact, you also need to have a broader impact statement. So this is a very common thing now in most machine learning conferences, that what is the potential to benefit and also to hurt society and contribute to the achievement of some specific societal outcomes. So you can consider the questions we have here. So for example, what is the potential to benefit society or also to hurt society? How is this, let's say, transformative or let's say radical or disruptive? If the plan makes sense, if the team is qualified to do this, and so on. And how access to the computer resources that we will provide will help advance your research. So maybe you will get more, let's say, funding later, or this will advance how this will advance the PI's career, or also the graduate students in your program as well. So this is also only 1 or 2 paragraphs. So it's more to have so you have some self-reflection of how do you expect this to have an impact, and also include any possible negative impacts. So how does the review process work? So this is a very standard process that you submit a grant application. We will get at least 3 reviewers to look at the proposal and review it, and then maybe submit some recommendations. We will get 3 reviews at least, maybe more, and this will go to the research subcommittee, and the research subcommittee will decide which are the accepted projects. So of course, the number of accepted projects is variable. It depends on how much time each project requests in terms of GPU computing time. So for example, if we have very, very large projects that may require months of compute time, and they're very interesting, then maybe we will have less projects. But ideally, of course, we want to accept the largest amount of projects possible, because we want to support our community. So the selection criteria, so it's a bit broad. So it's basically based on the creativity and the quality of the scientific content and the potential impact on the research community and society at large. So this is very standard for monetary grants, that you want to have, like, let's say, the best scientific content and the best scientific impact to your community. And we also consider or weight the technical and GPU requirements. So maybe if you have a project that is very, very large, maybe it doesn't fit to our cluster. Maybe the cluster is too small for this. I don't think this will happen, but it can also, of course, happen. And we need to weight how much time does your project require, and weight them to the capacity of the cluster. So here we have, so I think we are close to the end of the presentation. We have some general tips and tricks of how you should write your proposal. So first is that the composition of the team should be well justified. So of course, you should not add, let's say, random people to your team, because then you need to justify why this person is in this team, and how does it contribute, or why does it need to have access to the GPU computing cluster. So let's say you have a project, let's say on doing computer vision, and maybe you have 3 PhD students that are LatinX identifying, and you want to include all of them. And then you should say how each of these persons will actually fit into the overall team of the project. So of course, this means that, for example, collaborators that maybe do not fit very well, this can be a negative, will have a negative impact in the reviews of your project. So we'll of course notice these kind of things. But if everything fits very well and if it's well justified, then it's of course not a problem to include more people in your project. And of course, in terms of composition of the team, you should also consider the 50% Latinx identifying people that we require. And the experience of the PI and the co-PI, the principal investigator, should match the project topic. So of course that we should believe that the project is basically executable by the team. So for example, if you propose something in NLP and you have never worked in NLP, then of course this is a problem, because then the reviewers will definitely notice that maybe the PI doesn't have the experience to actually execute this project, and this could be a reason for rejection. But if it's in a topic that you are very, very an expert, or maybe the PI or the co-PI, or even the team of the project, then of course it should not be a problem. And use of GPUs must be required by your project, and it should be very well justified in the proposal. Like what exactly, let's say you request 1 month of GPU time, and you should of course tell us what you are going to use, like what kind of models you want to train, what kind of experiments you want to do. Maybe you want to do a very large, let's say, grid search, and for that you need 1 month of computing budget, and that's okay. But this should be very, very well justified in the proposal. Like this is maybe the most important thing you should describe outside of describing the project. Like, why do you need GPU access? So also estimating how much time do you need accurately is also very important for scheduling your project in the GPU cluster, because of course, since we use Slurm, you will definitely be queued. Like you will write your scripts and queue let's say the project deliverables or the project experiments into the cluster, and maybe it will take some time for them to actually start running. So estimating how much time you actually need is very important. And of course, how to do this accurately is not so trivial, but at least you can get some estimates from your own experience. But this, of course, should be very, very well justified as well. And also you can consider, or you should consider, what can go wrong in your experiments, and add this to as computed time uncertainty. So in general, it is better to have a higher bound in terms of GPU computing time. Let's say that you say you need 1 month, and maybe you use only 3 weeks. That's okay, because you use less. But if you say that you need 1 month, and maybe you actually need 2 months to actually produce the results, this is of course problematic, because then this is time that was not allocated to your project. So it is better to have like a higher bound that is of course reasonable, than not having enough time to produce your results. And of course, if there's any changes in the, let's say, in the project, maybe you realize that some experiments are not needed, or maybe you need more experiments that you actually requested, you can submit while you're executing your project to extend the time that has been allocated to you upon, of course, a reasonable request. So this can be evaluated during the project execution by the committee. So this is, of course, everything is possible. It is flexible, but of course, this should be, again, very well justified. So now, one last general tip and trick is that before starting to write your grant application, you should have a very clear idea of the project and all the required components. So if you don't have a clear idea, don't start writing the proposal. So this is, I think, when people don't have much experience writing proposals. So of course, trying to put all the thoughts and ideas in your head into one, let's say, general idea that you can put in the project is not so easy. And a lot of ideas that apply to writing a paper. So for this, you can refer to my tutorial last year about writing papers. A grant application is not written for you. It should be written so other people can understand it, especially the reviewers that we will have, and the program committee, or the general committee that we will evaluate the proposal and the reviews and decide if the project will be accepted or not. So the idea is that you write it for us and not write it for yourself. So this is a general topic that also applies to papers, that you should always write a paper for other people, not for yourself. And a very good tip that I always give, and it's very, very important, this applies also to proposals and papers, is that once you have a draft of your proposal, you should have colleagues in your institution or your collaborators review it and provide feedback, because this external vision of the proposal is very, very invaluable. Maybe they will see something that you're not seeing. And this is basically why we have some peer review. That the idea of peer review is that after the process, the paper or the proposal should be improved. So you should have some internal review at your institution or your collaborators. And after doing this, it's very likely that you will have a successful application. So here, I think we're close to the end of the presentation. So in the next slide, we can go for questions. What is the future? So this is the first time we're doing this. So of course, we're also learning about this process. So we will definitely accept any kind of feedback. But of course, in the future, we will have more calls for proposals. So we will have calls for proposals not only for projects, but also for specific needs. So for example, if you have machine learning courses in Latin America that need GPU access, let's say to run projects or to run experiments for your students, we will definitely have a call for proposals later, probably, of course, in next year. So maybe we can also have something like collab, but specifically that is for the Latin American community. So students can actually do experiments or train stuff for the bachelor or master thesis directly there. But for that, we will also have kind of a call for this. Maybe we also have specific calls for Latin American startups. If the startup needs GPU compute, we can definitely support this. So we are trying to think outside of the box of what kind of stuff we can do with this hardware that is not directly, let's say, research projects. But the current call for proposals that we have now, it's only for research projects, mostly. And for this, of course, please stay tuned in our social networks and in our mail lists. So I think we have here at the end. So we will now take questions from the audience. So let me check if there's questions in the chat.
So there's only one question so far, Matias. So while we're waiting for people to think of some additional questions, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the organization as a whole in case anyone here is new or joining us for the first time. So if that's okay, I will go ahead and share my screen really quickly.
Yes, please stop sharing.
Okay, great. Okay, is everyone able to see my screen with the website on it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect. And so for those who do not know me yet, my name is Laura Montoya. I'm one of the founders of the LatinX and AI organization and LXAI Institute. So essentially, this is just a brief overview of the organization since we have some extra time, and we want to make sure we give you an opportunity to also think of questions that you might have about the supercomputer program. So in general, LXAI was founded because we wanted to provide more representation and opportunities for Latinx identified researchers and engineers in artificial intelligence, professionals working in the space, students looking to become professionals, and so on. For us, this has evolved through many different types of programs, essentially, but our main mission here, as described, is to bridge communities, academics, industry, and politicians working to further AI innovation and resources for Latinx identified individuals globally. So we do this through many different programs that were already kind of covered, but essentially we try to drive and support research, development infrastructure, mentorship programs, et cetera, to boost innovation and capabilities of Latinx professionals working in AI, machine learning, and data science. You can learn a little bit more about the history of the organization, of course, on our website. But of course, if you want to get involved with the organization, if you want to get access to resources, to also meet other people, collaborators, potentially participate as a presenter or find presenters within our network, you should do this through our members directory. And particularly if you hit sign up here or log in on our website, that will take you to our app. This is essentially just a forum that allows you, again, to share resources, to post new opportunities. Essentially, it's built for you just to be able to connect with others and to share information online. And so that's just one of the ways that we try to help and support our members in our organization. We, of course, have many different research workshops and events that we also host. The next ones that are coming up include the ECCV workshop that we have. This one in particular is taking place virtually, and this will be hosted on Monday, October 24th. So this is another great opportunity, and particularly if you're interested in computer vision, to join and support the Latinx community that will be presenting their research in computer vision here in collaboration with the ECCV conference. So the main conference is taking place in Tel Aviv, but our session will be hosted virtually, so anyone can join. So please do join us for this one, whether you're presenting, volunteering, or just attending and asking questions. We did have a call for papers for this particular session, but you can also see in particularly who will be presenting for our keynotes. If you scroll down, we have some amazing keynotes that'll be joining this session, including here, Celia Cintas, Daniela Cherestan, Eduardo Aguilar Torres, and then also Gisela Bejarano and Laura Fernandez Robles. And then, of course, many who have sent in their call for proposals have sent in their research to be considered and are undergoing the program committee review process as well. So this is a great opportunity to get involved. Following that, we do also have our next NeurIPS workshop that'll be taking place. This will be November 28th. So the full conference will be November 28th through December 9th. and our workshop will be taking place on Monday, November 28th. So another great opportunity if you have broader interests in AI and machine learning. And of course, NeurIPS is our largest event usually of the year. So we would like to see more people there. This will be taking place in person in New Orleans. So if you would like to submit your research, we'll be putting out the call for abstracts and full papers very soon. We're also currently going to have a call for volunteers and et cetera. So there's many ways to get involved for this particular event. And then, of course, along with that, we also have our mentorship program. Our mentorship program is just a nice opportunity to have virtual mentorship, whether you want to be a mentor or a mentee. This is another great way just to support the community. So we have put out this call for mentors already for this next cohort, but we'll be sharing it again. And you can always access it as well on our website. So the general idea is that mentees decide, that they want to have a mentor. It could be in their particular area of research. They fill out our application. We connect them with a mentor based on their areas of interest, specialization, position within their career. And then, of course, we allow for that mentor to give feedback to that mentee. This happens over several sessions, over a few months. Essentially, they have a one-on-one meeting. And the idea is that the mentee then improves the outcomes from their mentor feedback that they receive. And finally, if they're going to be presenting at our workshop, they would, of course, also improve their presentation and finally publish and present with our event, but also at larger conferences, journals, etc. So this is a really great opportunity for anyone who is looking to advance their career to receive some feedback and mentorship within the program. You can find the applications here on the top of our website. So our mentorship program information, mentee application, and mentor application as well. And so we do encourage anyone, no matter what stage you are in your career, to get involved with these programs as well to better support the community. And then finally, if you haven't already visited our website for the Supercomputer Network, you can do so here as well. It's linked at the top of our site here, and you can get more information, background information about this particular program. You can also see the call for papers on the site as well, who should apply as was described. But if you want to look at more details, I know this is a great overview by Matias today, but if you really want to go into detail about the contents for this particular application, you can find the table of contents here, and you can see the application contents on this part of our website. So we also have some examples, so this might be very helpful to you. If you've never developed a proposal like this before, you can see these are examples that were taken from other programs that are very similar to ours. So we developed this application based off of NSF applications for grants. So it follows that model, which could also be very good practice for you if you're considering applying for monetary grants from government type organizations, et cetera. This is good practice for you to develop these types of grants if you've never done that before. So you can see examples of different types of grants here that were written. So this isn't going to match exactly the questions that we're asking, but it's very similar essentially. So you can see the type of grants also that we're looking for. So with that, the final thing we want to mention, of course, is that NVIDIA has been a great partner to us, and they have other programs like this as well that they host, research internships, et cetera. But in particular, they also have an NVIDIA academic hardware grant program. Of course, their call for this program is not open currently, but they will also be hosting their next cohort soon. The difference being is that they will donate 1 GPU to a particular research institution that, of course, applies and gets selected to participate in this system of theirs. So that's another opportunity if maybe you do not get selected for our program, but you would like to potentially have hardware donated to your institution, you could potentially apply directly to the NVIDIA Academic Hardware Grants portal. Do keep in mind you must be a member of their NVIDIA developer program to qualify, so you might want to sign up for that ahead of time and get involved in their network. And as was mentioned earlier in this talk already, we do have intentions to grow our program, our Supercomputer Network, to have more hardware donated to different institutions around Latin America, and in particular those that have a strong showing of supporting people within their community. And that was one of the reasons why we chose Tec de Monterrey as our pilot site for this particular program. We can give a little bit more detail about that later on. Gilberto mentioned it a bit in the opening of this talk, but essentially the idea is that we want to better support institutions that also support the LatinX community. So for what we will be looking for in new supercomputer sites, and we'll be sharing an application shortly for this, is essentially that those institutions have research publications that show that they already are using deep learning or have a strong potential need for GPUs and doing AI work, that they have access to large data sets or projects and use cases that require high computational power, right? So potentially they're a university that is already publishing or looking to publish within these areas, that they have students that have professional research master's degrees, essentially. So they have to show essentially that they have a system already set up to develop researchers that are going to be publishing in these areas as well. And this has to be, of course, in the areas of computer science, AI, and machine learning. Also that the institution has a strong commitment and record to diversity and sharing resources and infrastructure with other organizations and institutions in their local area. So of course, for us, Tec de Monterrey showed that they really had a strong reputation of doing this within their local community, that they connect with other nonprofit organizations. They have the AI for Good hub at Tec de Monterrey as well. So they have a proven track record of this. So that's what we want to see in other pilot sites for supercomputer installations. Additionally, that these organizations show that they serve underrepresented and low-income students rather than just potentially high-income students, or that they might be a private institution, right? So we want to see that these other locations are essentially serving a broader population. And that, of course, these professors that will be representing the institution and having a connection with us for the supercomputer network, that they already have some engagement with the LatinX and AI programs and community. So different ways to get involved, essentially, to show that you might be a good pilot site for this type of program, to have hardware donated and installed in your institution, would essentially to get involved with our other programs. So this could be the supercomputer network itself, if you would have interest in joining the committee. This could be joining one of our workshops, so becoming a chair essentially for our LatinX and AI or computer vision or NLP research workshops. This could be by becoming a mentor in our mentorship program, etc. So there's many different ways to get involved with the Latinx and AI community and programs. And by doing that, by showing that you're interested in helping others, then of course your site and your institution will be more highly considered for potentially having hardware installed in your location. So with that, I will also pause here, and then we can start answering questions. And I do see that there's already one question in the chat from Ulysses. The question is, could we extend the deadline? And Matias, I'll let you take that one.
Sure. So yeah, I think we're already thinking about extending the deadline. So tomorrow we will have a committee meeting, and then we will decide what to do. So yes, I think we will consider to extend the deadline, and we will probably announce that tomorrow.
Thank you, Matias. And also feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question. If you have not written it in the chat that you would like to ask, go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay, so we have a question here. What is the link to apply for the grant? So that's a great question. It is found on our website. I'll share my screen again and also paste it here in the chat for everyone. So let's go ahead and share. So here, if you're on the main website and you go to our supercomputer link, right, and into the call for papers, that'll take you to this site here. You can see this button here that says submit now. We're hosting the submissions through Open Review. So I'll go ahead and share that. You can also find it if you're on the main supercomputer site. There is a link to apply. But I'll go ahead and send this here for you guys. And you can see, so this is our summer submission for our first cohort. Okay, other questions? And again, feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question.
Hello, Laura. Thank you very much. Can you repeat the benefits of apply to this grant?
Yeah, definitely. So if we are looking here on the call for proposals, the benefits that you will receive if you go under the table of contents here are listed. So all applicants will receive feedback on their research submission. So essentially every submission that comes through this process will go through a review process, just like a peer review process for a research paper. And essentially you will get that feedback from our research subcommittee members, right, including the reviewers. And we did put in a sign up to be a reviewer. So if you're interested in participating on that side, if you're not quite ready to submit a proposal, it might be a good opportunity to sign up to be a reviewer so you can see the other types of proposals that are coming through this type of program, right? Especially if you have experience writing other types of grants, but maybe you're not sure what to submit just yet. We are, of course, looking for experienced reviewers. So we want people who have essentially published research in the past, as well as maybe had some experience writing research grants or monetary grants, and then of course maybe even reviewing for other types of programs like this, but that could be a good option as well to participate. And then you would also receive potential collaboration with these reviewers and other applicants of the program. So this is another benefit for you for submitting, and of course it gives you experience, as I mentioned earlier, in writing these types of grant proposals for either monetary donations or grants, or of course, like we're offering here, computational time on this particular hardware. And then for selected awardees, so those who actually pass through the review process and get selected, you would gain access to the GPU computing cluster for a specified number of job hours or timeline, depending on your specific project requirements. So that's going to be decided partially by what you submit in your grant proposal, as well as what the committee decides is reasonable for the type of project that you're doing. So maybe you're unsure, right, how much time you might need for this particular project, but we would like you to try to estimate. And then of course, having our committee of expert reviewers, they will help decide essentially what is reasonable for the type of project that you are trying to accomplish, how much time should be allotted to your group. And then of course, documentation for access, training, and setup for your project on this particular hardware system. As Matias mentioned earlier, we'll be setting up a Slurm system. There will be a Docker environment. So depending on the type of project that you have and what software packages you might need installed, there will be some assistance available to help you with that process. And then of course, there is support from the LXAI GPU Access Technical Subcommittee. So they'll also be available to answer questions you might have. And then access to training materials from NVIDIA directly. So NVIDIA has, of course, many materials that are available in not only general training in AI and machine learning, and as I mentioned, other programs that they have to support the broader community, but also specific training for utilizing this type of hardware. So you will gain access to that. And then support from the LXAI GPU Education Subcommittee to improve your outcomes in the project. So just like our mentorship program, the idea is that we want to help support these members who are coming through and producing research through the use of this hardware.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Do we have other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself or to type them in the chat.
Hello, good morning. Well, hello. If I send my proposal today, when is the soonest date that I could be running some, well, the experiments on the DGX related to that proposal?
Yeah, so if you look here at the top of our call for proposals page, you can see that the deadline to submit currently is September 1st. So potentially there might be a short extension provided, since we want to make sure we give people enough time to prepare their proposals here, but decision letters will be sent out on December 1st. And so following that, it will then be in the new year that you will be able to start running your projects. So ideally, you'll be able to access this as early as January of 2023.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Do we have any other questions from attendees? Feel free to unmute yourself. Okay, let's see. Are there examples from previous applications in the past? So Enzo, that's a good question. As we mentioned earlier, this is the first time that we are running this type of program. So this is a brand new program to LatinX and AI. But we did put examples of other proposals from similar types of grants and projects to ours. So you can find those here if you're on our website, latinxai.org/supercomputer-call for papers. Under the application contents, so if you're at the top, you can get to this really quickly just through using this table of contents. If you click on application contents here, down here at the bottom, you can see examples. So if you click on these links, there are examples of other proposals similar to the type of proposals that we are looking for, right? So they don't ask the same exact questions necessarily, but very, very similar questions. You can see what others have come up with. Other types of proposals that are essentially what we would be looking for this type of project, right? And how these people have structured theirs. We also have an application template here. So if you're comfortable developing your proposal in a LaTeX template on Overleaf, you feel free to use this. Again, this doesn't have every single question listed. This is just a template for formatting, but generally you should utilize this template. And then answer the proposal sections here on this side. So these are drop-down menus, essentially. You can see we want to have information about all of the applicants, right? So you want to include a 2-page CV for the principal investigator, as well as any co-PIs that'll be included. Additionally, you can include the Google Scholar profile and the DBLP profile for these individuals. We want to know your background and motivation. So essentially a problem statement to discuss why you want to do this particular project, etc. So I would say, to really prepare yourself, you should go through all of these application content sections and then include them in this template that we have here for formatting for the GPU proposal. And then you can, of course, reference these examples that we have linked here. So you can try to see the other types of projects that we would, of course, like to fund.
Thank you very much, Laura. Gracias.
Thank you, Enzo. Any other questions or comments from attendees that you would like to bring up? Okay, well, if there are no other questions from attendees, we want to thank you all again for your time today and remind you of the many ways to get involved with the organization and with our programs. So of course, if you haven't already, please do go on the website, join the app forum, and then start getting involved with our upcoming workshops. Especially if you are a professor, you have students essentially doing research or that need to publish their work and to gain access to new opportunities. These research workshops are a great way to have your students get that representation and get some visibility for their work, essentially so that they can get hired and move on in their career. And it's also really good for you as professors as well to gain access and also get some exposure in the more global AI and machine learning community. So if you have any questions about any of these programs, also feel free to reach out to us. If you haven't already joined our Slack channel, you can ask direct questions there. Or if you have questions about this particular program, you can also ask questions. If you go to the FAQ on our website or here as well, you can see if you have direct questions about this particular program, you can contact us at gpu-access@latinxai.org. Also, we have our FAQ. So if you have general questions and you want to check here on our FAQ first, these can, of course, answer a lot of the questions that you might have. So thank you again, everyone, for taking the time to join us today. We would really hope to see many great applications come in for the use of this hardware. And then also shortly, when we release the application for new supercomputer sites, if you want to be considered, if you want to have your institution considered to have hardware installed and donated in it, do look for that and prepare your proposal accordingly. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time, and we will share a recording of this as well after this session.
Yeah.